you're such a nice guy when you're not drunk. Why do you drink? And the reason why is I was addicted to it. It all kicked on from there. It was going from us supporting Toko Blade to just blow him out of the water, you know. It kind of stemmed from there and a lot of stuff before that. I mean, if I was them, I wouldn't like me either. And I wonder where Ace was, my best friend through the whole years. He buggered off home. He didn't have the balls to front me up.
And you guys marketed yourself that way, like, hey, we're young and crazy, which, you know,
exactly.
To a lot of people, that was a selling point.
I moved into the Tough Muff Mansion, as they call it.
Yeah.
Before we went, Stevie Rochelle's girlfriend said to me, promise me one thing. And I said, all right. She said, promise me you won't drink. Promise me you won't drink. And when Shotgun Messiah got rid of Zinni, I tried to audition for them because my lyrics, it's my Tailz, and it's all my melodies as well. Like them all over them, it's all mine. You know, since I had the stroke, I mean, that's messed me up quite badly. Music Connections owed me such a lot of money. Never got it. You know, never got it.
Apparently, you know, like you blew cigar smoke in a journalist's face.
I did do that. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm proud of that record. You know, it may be the last thing I ever do. It might not, but I'm really, really proud of it.
Are we basically saying that you're done?
Never say never.
The hair metal guru from Warren to Crew. The hair metal guru. Never forget Charlie too.
Hey, today I got somebody here who embodies the rock and roll spirit, and let's be honest, the excesses of the 1980s. And oh, by the way, he was the original vocalist for one of the glam kings of England, Tigertailz, and also embarked on an acclaimed solo career, Steevi Jaimz. Welcome to the show.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Hey, it's great to have you here. It's an honor. We were just talking about, I just reviewed this Tigertailz release, which has your release, Young and Crazy, on it. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's got the
album.
EP as well.
What's that?
I think it's got the EP on it as well, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, and it's got the EP on it. Yes.
Yeah, the original one we did.
Yes. What's it called again? Shoot to Kill?
That's it, yeah.
Yes. So, hey, so you have, man, I mean, there's a lot of stories about you out there. I'm just going to be honest. But before we get into the Tigertailz and what you did after Tigertailz, and I want to, you know, I really love I think it was 2008, your solo album, My Private Hell. I bought that years ago. I think I bought it off Stevie Rochelle's website, wore my Tough shirt today.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I want to get into like how did you end up getting started in music, and what led you to you know, joining bands and getting rolling as somebody who wanted to be in rock music?
Well, go back to Treason right at the beginning, new wave of British heavy metal. I mean, we were all into it over here because this is where it started, and you know, we were into Diamond Head, Raven, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden when they all first came out, you know. So I got together with some guys I knew in Oxford, and funny enough, I auditioned the same night Ace auditioned for Treason.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to that, we did stuff around Oxford and this and that, but it never really went anywhere. And you know, some of the guys came and went, some of them went off and got married or whatever. Me and Ace kind of stuck out, you know.
Yep.
And what we ended up doing was we had a band called Crash KO, and this was 1982, I think we started, and it was glam, but it was heavy metal, you know.
Sure.
And all of us had blonde hair long before any of these other bands. All of us had white hair, and we went out. We had done a few demos. We did this and that. We didn't. In my honest opinion, we should have got a lot further than we did. But you know, Phil went off the guitar player and he joined Bill Ward's band in America. So we didn't really ever replace him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it kind of fell by the wayside. And you know, after a few years of doing that, Crash Cow, I joined a band called China Road.
Okay.
In Leicester, and we went out and did some stuff. I lost contact with Ace Scott. I think he stayed down in Oxford and joined a band called Trans Am. I'm not really sure about all that. But fast forward it a bit to 19, when did I go? 1985, I think, is when I went to the States. And I lived out there for a while. And I joined up with Ace again. We had a band called Idle Threat. And all we did was every single day rehearse loads and loads of covers until they were, until they were second nature. And we were supposed to go out and do these covers tours and everything, but we always wanted to do original stuff. So this show came along where we could play. I think it was Jack Panzer was headlining. I mean, you know what they're like, if you know, I've heard it. Yeah.
Jag Panzer.
And it was our first show. It was in Colorado Springs, and I went out and met with Harry, the singer from Jag Panzer. And before that, I got really wasted, really badly wasted.
Right.
And I remember coming home, getting in the shower, and just falling out of it. And Ace was going mad, you know. I mean, I did this show. I was a bit bleary-eyed, but it was unprofessional. I've never done it since, and. Yeah, it was a bit of a disaster for us, really. And anyway, I lost in the States till my visa ran out, you know. And I came back summer of '85, and I was desperately looking for bands. I went to a lot of auditions, nothing I really liked, nothing I really got offered it. And so I think I guess it was around October, I'm not sure at the time. Sometime around the winter of '85, I saw an advert in Sounds magazine over here called Sounds. It was a newspaper magazine. I don't know if you heard of it or not.
I have. I bet I have 100 issues of Sounds here. I'm a collector of it. I love Sounds.
It was legendary, mate. It was like the Bible. Every Thursday I got it, and I was looking through the classifieds as you do, and it said. I can't remember the exact. I did have the advert for years, but I've lost it now. It said something along the lines of mop top metal band, seek vocalist, blah 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 blah. And it had a telephone number there. So I looked at it and I thought, right, I'll give him a call. And so I called the number up, and turns out it was Pepsi. Which I was talking to first of all. And I arranged to go down there to up there if you like to Cardiff to audition. And that was a spooky kind of coincidence as well, because on the bus on the way there was Phil, my old guitar player from Crash KO.
Oh no way!
He was auditioning for Persian Risk at the same time.
Okay.
So it was a really weird one. Anyway, I got off the bus and Pepsi met me, and I thought it looked cool, and we talked. We had a lot in common at the time, a lot in common.
Yep.
And I think I went back for an audition. I can't remember I don't think I was auditioned when I met him, but I went back up there for an audition, and that's when they were a 5-piece.
Okay.
Yeah, different drummer, rhythm guitar player, and obviously Jay and Pepsi. And it was weird, you know. We went to this Battle of the Bands thing. We did a video. We were speeding our nuts off when we went up there. And we went up to this place and did this video that I think you had to, I don't know, Pepsi sorted it all out, but we got this video out of it, and that's what we wanted, you know.
Okay.
But in the midst of that, we watched it back and everybody's chewing their face off. And Mick is Jay. Mick was doing his getting his guitar and going around his neck and come back down, a la Cinderella, you know.
Yep.
And he whacked it straight in the guitar player's face. So that all took place. We had a good laugh, you know, and that's basically where that all started. The whole Tigertailz thing started.
Okay. So you went to the States and you met up with Ace. When does Ace come back and end up joining Tigertailz?
What happened was we went through, the rhythm guitar player didn't last very long.
Yep.
And we went to a 4-piece, and the drummer we had just wasn't very good. Okay. And we did a demo of Living Without You somewhere. That is on the net somewhere with the old drummer. And it just really laboured, you know. So he went, and Ace wasn't in the country yet, but he was interested. I'd sent him this, what I sent him, the Shoot to Kill demo out after we'd done it. Well, we actually did it with Tokyo Blade drummer, Steve Pierce.
Sure.
You know, so they were friends of mine because I auditioned for them. That's another story completely.
Yep.
I auditioned for Tokyo Blade when I was in Tigertailz, and I cockily thought, you know, I'll get this. I put all eggs in one trolley and they all fell out. But I made contact with them, and so Steve Pierce did the original Shoot to Kill that's on that box set. Is Steve Pierce drumming, but Ace's picture on the back, on the front. Anyway, I later on, not that far down the line, I said, because I've been asking Ace to come back and join us for a little while. I told the guys about him, stuff, blah blah blah. Yeah. And in the end, I sent him that out, and he couldn't refuse, and he came back over.
Okay.
You know? And we took it from there.
I got to back up. When was this audition for Tokyo Blade? When did that happen?
This was early on in my Tigertailz career.
Okay. So this is before Young and Crazy.
Oh man, this is before the demo even.
Okay, before the demo. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I was just, it wasn't, I come from the new wave of British heavy metal, and they were legendary, Tokyo Blade. Sure. And I was friends with two of them, so that's how I got the audition.
Okay.
And I just wasn't happy with the direction we were going. They had songs like Walking on Air, Tigertailz I'm on about, Walking on Air and other stuff. And I just thought it was, it just wasn't very good.
Okay.
Anyway, I didn't get the Tokyo Blade audition, obviously.
Right.
And went back with my tail between the legs and said, right, if we're going to do this, we got to write whole new stuff, get our shit together and just get on with it, you know. And that's how that all started.
So once you get together with Jay and Pepsi and you record the EP, I mean, what's the process of you guys building a name and getting a name that leads you to the record deal that would become Young and Crazy? Like where the playing process, what was the club scene like? Can you go into that?
Oh man, the club scene was great back then, you know. There was a little club in Cardiff, and it was packed out every weekend, and we went down there. We started building a little following, you know. Obviously, we made Pepsi made some proper tapes up of the demo we'd done. We were giving them out and stuff, and that led us to Tokyo Blade's management.
Okay. And
this is when I joined the band by then. So we went out on a little tour with Tokyo Blade, and we went to Holland, somewhere, I can't remember the other places, but there was 3 or 4 gigs, European gigs, you know.
Sure.
And we started stepping up from there. You know, before Ace came back, we'd written Mick. I'll call him Mick for argument's sake. His name's Jay, obviously, Jay Pepper. Yes. We always called him Mick, and that's how I know him.
Sure.
Mick used to drop a tape round at my flat in Cardiff when I moved there. And it'd just be a riff tape. It'd just be little riffs all over the place.
Sure.
I'd pick out the ones I liked, and then I'd work on them. And that's how I started writing the songs with them.
And the songwriting would end up becoming controversial because later on we would hear, you know, some people claiming to have written some stuff. There's some disagreement with you, and maybe we'll get into that. But after the Shoot to Kill EP, when did you get your deal to end up putting out your full length debut, Young and Crazy?
What happened was when the Shoot to Kill EP came out, it gathered interest, and we had an interview with Kerrang magazine.
Yes.
This is when Kerrang mattered, and we did the interview, and it came out when we were on the Tokyo Blade tour.
Sure.
And we were like little kids in a sweet shop, you know. This is our picture. This is our first big thing. And it all kicked on from there. It was going from us supporting Tokyo Blade to just blowing out the water, you know.
Right.
And that's where the whole momentum came from.
Okay. So you get signed and you record. What can you tell me about where did you record Young and Crazy? how long did it take? Who was the producer? Tell me about that process of making the album.
We did 2 versions of that album. Not many people know that. We actually recorded the first one in a place called Usk, which is more or less on the Welsh border.
Okay.
We recorded that with Tim Lewis, who worked with them quite a lot, after I'd gone and before when I was there. And it came out quite well, but when we got signed to MFN, they made us do it again. So
Music for Nations, right?
Yeah, Music for Nations.
Yep.
They wanted us to redo a lot of it again. So we went in this little studio in London. People talk about having budgets of like 20 grand and this and that, for their first album. We had a budget of 0. They paid for the record and that was it. And it cost about £7,000. It was done lightning quick, not as quick as the first Black Sabbath album, but it wasn't many days we spent in there. And we weren't happy with it. We weren't happy with the sound. I remember coming out of there and Pepsi almost crying, when he heard it. And I said, we'll have to go back in and get the engineer or someone to do it. And that's what we did in the end, but we couldn't save it, because it was produced by Steevi Jaimz, who's the son of a comedian over here called Sid James, who you know from, excuse me, know from the Carry On films.
Okay.
And he was doing a lot of coke, his top end had gone. And anyway, maybe I shouldn't say that, but it didn't sound the way we did it. But nowadays, when people listen to it, it's got that raw edge, done in flat amount of time, spent no time around the edges or, barely any frills on it.
Well, and there's a song. Well, I'll just tell you, the first song that ever made me become a Tigertailz fan was Star Attraction.
Yeah.
Your vocals on that, and there's a great guitar riff. I was like, holy shit. Because I don't know, I'm in North Dakota in the United States. I mean, we're talking one of the smallest states. It's not like there was a bunch of information available about Tigertailz.
Yeah, we didn't have the internet back then. It was on. Right.
But somehow I stumbled upon this song and I was like, damn, I need to go and then, go find the album. And by the way, it took forever to find Young and Crazy because you just could not find that in America when I discovered you guys. Anyway, but on that album, you guys got, I don't know how big of a hit, but was it top 40 over there with Living Without You?
When they redid it, yeah. It wasn't with me though.
Okay. But it was originally on the album Young and Crazy.
Oh, yeah. I wrote the original. I wrote it, but yeah. I was going to say pre-me then. After I came, they got top 40. Did really well. And
I think you can tell they got to put more money into it, like you said.
Absolutely. I bet that single cost more than Young and Crazy put all together.
Right. So
it was the cheapest record going, mate.
Right. And people, you talk about how much it costs to make. A lot of people talk about the fact that Poison's record cost like 23 grand to make, but you guys were working with even less than that.
Oh, so much less than that, And it was a budget of nothing, because we just don't have any money. None of us had any money, not the record, because we paid for that first EP when that was done.
Sure.
But going back to Star Attraction,
yes,
that was an idea that Jay had and I had about what's the old Chuck Berry song that Wasted did? Well, Johnny was a rockin'. Da, 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 da. Yeah, we wanted to do a rock and roll song kind of like that, So we sat down and 2.5 minutes and Star Attraction was born.
Amazing. So, okay, so after you get done recording, when do you start to notice that because that's your only album.
Yeah.
When do you start to notice the issues? When is there animosity and you're like, oh shit, there's a problem here?
It came on obviously the last tour I did with me. We toured the UK. And excuse me, we toured the UK, and there was problems going into that because one day it was my birthday, and I missed a train. I was in London. I missed a train back to Bristol, and they all thought I was, usual, just hammered, hanging out of on somebody's floor or whatever. Well, what actually happened is I missed the train. I genuinely missed the train to Bristol.
Sure.
Like that, I saw it going off down the, and I thought, this is not good, And by the time I got there, I got a cab to the place. They'd already sound checked, done everything. It was nearly ready for the doors to open, and they were not happy with me, And it kind of stemmed from there, and a lot of stuff before that. I mean, if I was them, I wouldn't like me either. I could start fighting in an empty room. I was drinking a lot. I was, not before gigs. I never drank before I went on stage, but I was just getting in a lot of tight spots. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay. And then I don't want to dig into all the bad stuff, but there was talk that you had issues with journalists if people gave you bad reviews. That apparently, like you blew cigar smoke in a journalist's face.
I did do that. That's true.
Okay.
Not the biggest crime in the world, is it?
Right. It's not that big a deal.
No. I've heard stories as well where they embellished on that and said, I spat beer in his face. That is totally untrue. I got a cigar. All the band were there. They were egging me on to do it. I got a cigar and just blew this big puff of smoke in his face.
Sure. And so when, I don't know when it came out, but that there was, you've said that you wrote most of Young and Crazy. Jay Pepper claimed differently, and I'm sure you've talked about it, but for our listeners, can you kind of what happened there? Like, what happened with the writing of the album, and why was there so much disconnect between you guys?
This is how I look at a song. A guitar riff is a guitar riff.
Yep.
A melody, a title, and the lyrics is more music than the guitar riffs.
Sure.
I wrote all the melodies, I had all the song titles, and all the lyrics mine. Okay. So, make of that what you will. I'd say 3/4 me and a quarter Mick.
Okay.
Some more than others we worked on, but I can remember Shoot to Kill. I had that idea in my head going to Cardiff on the train one day, so I don't know how you can say he wrote that, but it is what it is. I don't really care.
Sure.
I mean, I know what I did, and your listeners can judge for themselves.
Right.
It's my lyrics, it's my titles, and it's all my melodies as well. Like them all over them, it's all mine. So that's what I did in the band. If you want to say I wrote a song because I put a guitar riff to it or I put a guitar solo to it, then so be it.
Sure. Okay. Well, when the album was finished, how were the writing credits divvied up? And I didn't look at it, but when you finish, you got to go, okay, you get 80%, I get 20% or whatever. How were they divvied up right at the end?
Me and Mick split it. I think it was 25-25, and I involved Ace in my side, and he involved Pepsi in his side. Okay. I don't know how it has ever worked out because I was gone not long after the album, as you know. Sure. And so I don't know what ever happened, but I know Music for Nations owed me such a lot of money. I never got it. Never got it.
Okay. After the album was released, what touring was there after Young and Crazy, or was there much before you ended up leaving the band?
Yeah, there really wasn't much. Up until the album, we were up and down the country, all the time, playing to 2 people in Carlisle to playing to 2 nights sold out on the Marquee. So when we first started, it was a hard road, and the shit we got from people was unbelievable.
What do you mean, the shit you got from people?
Oh, the way we looked.
Okay.
They weren't interested in music at all. I hear Mick often talk about, it was a curse the way they looked. Well, if we hadn't looked the way we looked, we never would have got recognised like we did. But
Sure.
with that came a lot of crap as well, you know. I
Was
mean,
was there any thought of trying to go to America? And I mean the glam scene was exploding. I don't know how difficult that is for a band where you guys were from, but did you ever consider it? Because you'd obviously already been to America.
yeah, and this is a joke. We sat he's dead now. His name was Martin Hooker, MFN. We sat in his office, and they were on about American stuff and got us going out there. And he looked straight at me and he said, "We're not going because of him." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean because of me? I'd already been there, but without any trouble at all." He said, "Because he'll get shot," and that was it. That was the excuse.
He said that you'll get shot.
Yep,
Why? Or
because I get in trouble so much, I'll get shot.
okay, okay.
Some things you remember them saying, just like the "I Want You to Want Me" cover we did, when he turned around and said to me, "That'll never be a hit." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" The trouble with MFN, they had all thrash bands. It was all metallic, he had no idea how to market us.
Sure. I'm an avid collector of Kerrang, and I remember seeing Music for Nations ads, and there'd be, like you said, a ton of thrash bands, and then there might be one kind, Poison was on some of these ads.
Yeah.
And you'd just be like, one of these looks like it's kind of out of place. So maybe they weren't ready to get behind you as much as you felt they should have.
I think they weren't ready. This is my take on it, right? I don't know because I wasn't there subsequently for the second record.
Sure.
But the first record sold so well in America, in Japan, in England, especially in Europe, that they had the money to do a second album, and the record company were falling over themselves by then. That second album, Ace has told me some of the costings of it, and he said the photo session alone was thousands. Back then it was a lot of money, to do a photo session.
Right.
Not like now when you sit in front of a black screen and do your stuff, you know what I mean? But they spent incredible amounts on them, incredible amounts. So I'm not saying because of me, but they benefited hell of a lot because that first album did so well.
Yeah.
There was no expectations. There was no money put into it. There was a lot of promotion, but there was no money put into it. So the record company were just calling it in. I remember being in the record company, Music for Nations, in the office one day, and I've never seen so many shirts and vinyls flying out the door, and then never saw a penny.
Right.
Penny.
Okay. So when is the moment that things come to a head and they're like, you're out?
Oh, that's a long story as well, because I was told I'd been replaced by a friend of mine who'd heard them talking in the coffee shop in Carnaby Street. And I said, well, they've not said anything to me. He said, oh, they're talking about a new singer, and Ace was there. And I said, well, I don't know. And at the time, I didn't really care because we weren't getting along, It was hard work. It just weren't getting along. I wasn't getting along with them, and they hated me. Right. And I wasn't surprised, but that's how I heard about it. I heard about it before they told me. I went into the offices. It was in Carnaby Street one day, and they were all a bit weird in there. There was a vibe going on, and they said, "Mick and Pepsi want to meet you in the." It was a pub around the corner called Ship, and I thought, this sounds a bit. And I wondered where Ace was, my best friend through the whole years. He buggered off home. He didn't have the balls to front me up, And those two, I remember now, I walked in the doors and I saw them at the table and Mick was smirking at me and I knew something was going on. So I bought a beer, sat down with them, and they just said, "It's not working, is it?" I said, "No, it's not."
Okay.
And it was, I didn't even put up a fight. I should offer my money,
Right.
So I just left the pub feeling that I'd done all this hard work for no apparent reason at all, And I was, I wasn't happy about it, obviously, but they'd obviously got a new singer already, and it was in place, and everything was sorted for them. Whereas I was kicked out the door, and that was it, There was nothing for me. Martin Hooker, the record company manager, said to me one day, if you do something, let us know and we might put it out. Well, I was getting audition tapes sent to their office from people from Kerrang, and I put an advert in there. And I was picking them up, and there was footprints on them where they, people had trodden on it and just kicked it around. It was sad, you know what I mean? It was like they were frightened I was going to do something. It really was.
I'm just trying to figure out why. And I'll just ask. I mean, you were a partier, and you guys marketed yourself that way. Like, hey, we're young and crazy, which
exactly.
To a lot of people, that was a selling point.
Yeah.
That you were kind of wild.
I had this guy who used to come to a lot of gigs, and he pulled me aside one day. He said, when are you going to be View from the Bar next? View from the Bar was like a little spin-off thing. People have been doing stuff. And I said, I don't know. Depends if we're getting another fight. And he said, well, hurry up and do it then, because I collect every single one of those clippings. It was things like that. We had people, we had different sets of fans at clubs.
Sure.
Like Ace had all the thrashers because he was he was pretty good drummer. He was fast, double bass. The boy had all the girls, all the jewelry. I had all the alcoholics giving me bottles of whiskey and stuff. And it was, people were saying, what did you drink when you woke up? I said, well, I had a cup of tea like most people. Nah, come on, I bet you drank a bottle of Jack Daniels. And I hate Jack Daniels. I said, no, it wasn't like that, but that's the reputation I built. And like they say, you build a monster and the monster kicks you down the hill.
I mean, did it seem like were the other guys living it up too? Like you kind of were, or were they a little bit more?
Yeah, they were nearly as bad as me. I mean, when we were recording Young and Crazy, the Pepsi got, I shouldn't talk about him really, but this is funny. He got so pissed in the studio, he walked up the road and just fell asleep flat in the middle of the road. And I remember Ace and Mick walking off. I said, we can't leave him just there. I said, not our problem. So I picked him up and we walked back to the rooms, Just stuff like that. Because I lived with Pepsi when I first moved to Cardiff.
Yeah.
So, back then I was pretty close to him.
Right.
But, I have no idea why. We should have at least done another album.
Sure.
It would have been massive. I mean,
yes,
their album was big anyway, but it would have exploded, And Music for the Nation didn't like any of the stuff we were writing, and that was that. And blow me if they don't put a single out, and the single is Living Without You. It was just like, they're rubbing in my face now,
I was just gonna ask, because yes, they put more money into it. It's updated. Yep. You can tell they got to produce it more than you guys did. Here comes Living Without You being the first thing they do, a song that you would think they would want to announce their new, okay, we're moving forward, but no, they come with the song that you guys did.
Yeah, I would, when I first saw it, I was like, you've got to be kidding. They just got a new singer. Surely they've got some new songs.
Right.
But apparently they didn't have. They didn't have any new songs for a long time, and that's why Berserk took forever to come out.
Right. That came out in 1990.
Yeah, and it should have come out in 1988.
Right.
They should have bang, bang, bang. That's what we would have done.
Right.
It's no good waiting 4 years. I mean, it's nearly over by then.
So when the time comes that, okay, you're out, you said you went to the bar and they were like, it's not working, and you agreed it wasn't working. Was there a part of you that was like, all right, now I can do it the way I want to do? And so what happened after that?
Yeah, I'd lost that lifeline of having a record company behind you, having a management behind you. I had nothing, I walked out of that room with the clothes on my back, nothing else. I had no one helping me out. I had to build all that myself.
Yep.
And it took a long time. It was never the same, When I first joined Tigertailz, when Ace first joined Tigertailz, it was the four of us. We were a gang. We had, I thought anyway, everybody had everybody else's back. I remember Pepsi getting in, the two guys at the front of the stage spitting on them all night, calling them puff and everything. This was in Leicester. And in the end, I mean, fair play to him. He took his bass off and smashed one of them around the edge, you know, because they were being all night long, just picking on him. And
Right.
when it all kicked off, I was jumping in there, you know, with the best of them.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't again, you know. And Ace not being there to tell me I'm not in the band anymore was a big kick in the face, you know.
Because
Just to fuck out and say, look, sorry.
it probably would have been better coming from a guy that you were friends with. You were the pair that kind of linked up together.
Look at Bill Ward. He told Ozzy, didn't he?
Right.
I never did understand that. I never did understand, but you know, it was his choice. He said he didn't want to face me because he didn't want to replace me. But I said, well, I was going to get replaced anyway. You at least could have fronted me out because he was in London that afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, he just left before they met me in the pub.
I did. Excuse me. I did listen to an interview where he did say he didn't want to replace you. He wanted, excuse me, he wanted to stick with you, but I'm sure it still hurts that he wouldn't show up and be there.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of water's passing the bridge now, but it just, I don't know, things like that stick in my craw. They really do. Because if that would have been me, I'd have said, you're sacking him, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the band as well. Right. That's how I would have done it, you know. Unless there's a lot of money involved. There was no money involved. You didn't get tons and tons of cash.
Right.
But I've heard a lot of stories over the years, as you have probably, about things that happened and why this, and I've done this, and I upset this person. And the majority of it, the stories are better than the truth, obviously. And I heard that they got pressured into getting rid of me. Okay. I knew for a fact the guy at the record company, the head of the record company, did not like me because I wasn't a yes man. I wouldn't click to his tune, you know.
Right. Okay. So okay, you record an EP, and I think it came out in '89. Kick the Habit.
Yeah. I got myself back together and found the right people, and I found a manager at the time. It was really good. He kind of would say something to you, and it wouldn't happen. And then he'd say something like to me, "I've got Judas Priest's X stage set for your next gig." And I'd turn up, there'd be ramps, walkways, and I'd be like, "How did you do that?" He said, you know, he's one of those guys. And anyway, he started managing me. We got Scott Gorham involved from Thin Lizzy.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, Scott Gorham. Okay.
Yeah, Scott Gorham produced it. And we went up to Lincolnshire, and I still think that's a really good, would have probably been the next Tigertailz song, Cat and Hot Roof. Everybody loved that song.
I just watched the video for it on YouTube just the other day. Getting ready for it. Yeah, it's great.
Catchy, it's poppy, it's you know, it is what it is. And so we recorded that, but for some reason the EP was excuse me, hold on. The EP was called Kick the Habit.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember why that would have came about, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. My manager's probably behind it. But Cat and Hot Tin Roof should have been the A side, and it wasn't. And we had Carlin Music paying for that. That cost more than the Young Crazy album.
Okay.
It cost about $8,000 to do that single.
So was there any opportunity? Was there any interest in getting a label opportunity to put out a full length album? So what happened with that?
I went to the one meeting I remember vividly was I was invited to Polydor Records, and I went in there, and ironically the guy was seeing me was Welsh, which was bizarre. Anyway, I played him the stuff, he liked it, and then all of a sudden he went off to this weird tangent. He said, "If you're going to make it, you need to be like this." And he played Little Angels for me. And I said, "But I'm not Little Angels, you've already got them, you know." And that was the last I ever heard of it from him.
Right.
So, you know.
Okay.
There was a few other labels, but nothing that big, you know what I mean? Not like that. I mean, FM Revolver, do you remember them?
Who?
You heard of FM Revolver Records?
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
did the Rough album.
yeah.
He wanted to sign us, but
Yep.
the advance he was offering wouldn't pay for the single, you know.
Sure.
So I met him. I think that was South London somewhere. Him and Dave Roberts, who used to be in Silverwing, and yeah, they wanted to sign us, but I said we can't record an album for that kind of money. You know,
Sure.
it's still in the late 80s.
Right. So is this when you moved to Los Angeles?
Yeah, not long after that, I got offered a band called Cherry Street. Have you heard of those?
Cherry Street.
Yeah.
Tom Others does Paris.
Tom Mathers, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, they were looking for a singer, and I was talking to everybody, and I thought, well, you know, I'm getting nowhere over here. I'm not doing what I want over here. So I took a punt, and I put all my eggs in another basket that fell over.
And Cherry Street had kind of a big name on the street. I mean, I think there was always, oh, they're going to be the next ones.
Yep.
And you know, but now we're getting to the end of the scene in Los Angeles. So what happened when you got there and we're going to hook up with those guys?
I hooked up with them, and they kept wanting to do KLOL Hot Tin Roof and stuff, and you know, some of my old stuff, and I was like, I moved to get away from that, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then he said about it before. Stevie Rochelle, who's my friend, got in touch with me, and he said, "What are you doing with those guys?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "No, move over here." He made me move to his. Well, he didn't make me move. He invited me to move over to his apartment. So that came to a shuddering halt as well. Everything was really rushed in Cherry Street. When I joined, it was, oh, we got a gig next week. We got this and that. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I've only just got here, you know?
Yeah.
No, it was all too quick for. Tom, I've been friends with for a long time. Tom's a lovely guy. I upset him a lot when I you know, quit. But no, it was just one of those things that didn't work out again.
Okay.
You know, I was left high and dry, you know. I moved into the Tough Muff Mansion, as they call it.
Yeah. Tough Muff Mansion. It's famous.
It was famous. It was funny.
Tell me about living with Stevie Rochelle and what was that like? I mean, I'm a big fan.
The thing was, I was kind of, you know, I didn't have a room there. I slept on the couch with a guy called Gerolitis, we used to call him. And funny enough, he now, or years later, started working for being a PR and a big boss of Vin Diesel. So I should have stayed with him, really. But I slept on the couch, and you know, one night, as you do, drank too much beer and got in a bit of a shindig with a massive guy who was about, I don't know, 6 foot wide and 6 foot tall, and chased him about with a bread knife or something like that. Then it was time to move out. You know, I thought, you know, respect to Steve, I didn't want to get any further than that. So.
And Stevie's always, you know, notoriously doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs. So I was going to say that's kind of an odd pairing because.
Absolutely.
Okay. So how long were you living with him?
I don't know how long I was there, actually. You probably remember. So sketchy back then. It was a few months. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a couple of days. Let's put it that way.
So are you? I'm assuming you're searching. You know, if it's not Cherry Street, I'm assuming you're trying to get something started in Los Angeles. Like what was going on?
I don't think people believed who I was.
Okay.
That was the problem I had. And just before I left, I was living with these 2 Italian guys in. I can't remember what it was called now, but you know, there's a lot of people up that way living there, like Shooting Gallery, Andy McCoy, and that. And I put an advert in. I think it's Recycler or Rock City News, because one of the guys who wrote for it come around. he was absolutely loving being with me all the time, you know.
Sure.
And I put this advert in, but by the time the advert went in, I'd already got back to England. They were saying
Oh,
the phone was ringing off the hook, you know,
okay.
and there's nothing they could do about it.
And if
So, sorry.
no, if I understand, I think it was 1991 when you were living with Stevie.
Yeah,
Tufts, What Comes Around Goes Around came out in 1991, but
yeah.
Nirvana's Nevermind also came out in 1991. What
Yeah.
was your perspective of watching grunge come in?
Um, it really hadn't come in by the time I'd left. I
Okay.
mean, it was getting a bit sketchy and stuff. They never went down the strip very much like they used to.
Yep.
I don't think Stevie went out hardly at all. Well, didn't drink, didn't do drugs, didn't smoke, so just stayed in his room with his girlfriend. You know, so I was left high and dry, and I met with the guys living there called Todd Wilts, and we had a hell of a time. I tell you, we were drinking every night. Hawaiian punch and cheap vodka.
Okay.
So we were getting loaded and
Okay.
just just doing stupid things really. But it's when I remember because they shot the video for I Hate Kissing You Goodbye. And
Yep.
I went to that video shoot. Yeah, I remember being down there, It
Sure.
was a massive, lavish shoot. It really was.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, Jesus Christ, man, they're lucky, they're getting all this stuff. But it really was right at the end, wasn't it? They were just too late.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a pretty common theme in a lot of, if that album had come out in 1989, but 1991, there were not any new bands breaking in 1991.
Yeah.
So
I was friends with the guys from Brittany Fox, and they were on the same management company,
okay.
And I've got a story about that as well.
Please.
I forget who it was. If you think 1990, who was the big world heavyweight champion? Was it still Mike Tyson?
I think it's Tyson.
Yeah, with that there was a big boxing thing on a weekend. So
Yep.
all the what was the bass player? Yeah, the big family of bass players.
In
In the guy from Tough, his brothers.
Chase on.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
Jason families were there with
Yeah.
their kids and everything else. And before we went, Stevie Rochelle's girlfriend said to me, "Promise me one thing." And I said, "All right." She said, "Promise me you won't drink. Promise me you won't drink." I said, "No, all right." So I just got slaughtered. And I ended up running around the room with my trousers and my arse hanging out, and they just asked me to leave.
Well,
I mean, Johnny D and Billy from Pretty Fox were in hysterics, but nobody else was.
I was just, since you mentioned Brittany Fox, well, Dean Davidson left Brittany Fox after the Boys and Heat album. They did get a guy named Tommy Paris. So
That's right.
were there other, and they put out which I think is a fantastic album in 1991, Bite Down Hard. Were there any other bands like from the strip? We talked about Cherry Street. Anybody else reach out?
But they didn't reach out, and I don't know how true this is, but I remember one of the guys saying, "If you'd have played guitar, you'd have been our next singer." I said, "Shut up," and they said, "Yeah, only because you couldn't play guitar."
Who was
Who knows?
that?
Sorry,
Who was that? Who said that to you?
that was either I think it was Billy, bass
Okay.
player.
Oh,
Yeah, I was pretty close with Billy while I was there,
Sure.
And when Shotgun Messiah got rid of Zinni, I tried to audition for them because my friend worked for Relativity, and he
Okay.
got Tim Scold on the phone, and he told him about me, and they said, "Cool, send some stuff out." So when I got back to England, I sent some stuff to California, and about 6 months later, it all came back to me.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I doubt I'd have got that job either, but you never know.
Sure.
Weird things happen in life, don't they? What I always say is you go down one pathway, and if you go left or right, it takes you to either destruction or glee, and depending who you are, that's how it goes.
So you go back to England. What happens then? Because I'll be honest, this is about where it's hard to find information about you.
yeah, I kind of got lost in the Russell. Yeah, the 90s was quite tough, you know. It was everybody had to change. They had to change or they sank, you know. We were playing clubs and some of them were, because I was still known for Tigertailz. It didn't mean very much back then.
Yep.
Some of the clubs were pretty well attended. Some of them, you had 3 or 4 people in them. It varied where you went, and
Was this
uh,
was this as Steevi Jaimz or in a band as Steevi Jaimz?
yeah. Well, I'm trying to reset everything I went through when I came back.
Yep.
I got back, and as I say, I did that single, and we went out and did a small UK tour, and it was brilliant. It was great. We had a band from the States, well, not supporting us, they were co-headliners, called, what are they called? Oh, oh, that's going to bug me forever now. They were like an AOR band from New York. And the name was something to do with a school or whatever. I bet you would have heard of them back then.
Yeah, and in fact, I was just reading a Kerrang article that was about your solo tour after Tigertailz. I'm assuming it's when because it talks about Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and things like that. And
Definitely.
this is just a couple days ago, and I'm sure I know what band you're talking about. But anyway,
Boys Town.
Boys Town.
Yeah,
Oh,
they were called Boys Town.
okay, that doesn't ring a bell, but
AOR band from New York.
okay.
But anyway, yeah. Well, obviously, if they were on about Cat and Hot Tin Roof, that was after. I had so many different lineups, you know. I had
Yep.
different guitar players all the time, and you know, couldn't settle on the right person, or the right person wanted to do something else.
Right.
And this guy Dave, he was a younger guy than me. He was absolutely brilliant. We got on well, and I got a drummer in the band he wanted, and he ended up leaving with the drummer, you know, and they went down south somewhere. But yeah, I kept in touch with Dave afterwards. He was the guy I did the first tour as a Cat on the Roof, Hot Tin Roof single.
Okay.
So
Okay.
he did that first tour. After that, I had the guys from the Tattoo Love Boys, Darius and Mark.
Okay. Okay, so it's you're saying obviously it's rough in the 90s for anybody who's
Yeah,
associated with the old scene.
yeah.
It's not like the guys in Tigertailz were, hitting them out of the park in the 90s either. So
No,
what was your next move? I mean,
I,
what could
you
you
know
do?
what? Yeah, I don't know. I winged it. I
Yeah,
winged it. I was doing this. I was doing that, and you know, trying to scrape a living doing that kind of stuff.
sure.
It was really tough. I
Yeah.
mean, it was. Yeah.
Then the next release that I know of is a compilation album, Damned If I Do, Damned If I Don't. Is that and feel free to
Yeah,
correct us.
yeah, it's just demos and things that we took in the studio. Oh, because someone contacted me and they were like, "Oh, have you got this? You got that? Got anything else?" I said, "Well, I've got a bunch of demos from this lineup, from that lineup," and we ended up having just about enough to make a compilation. So we put "Damned If I Do" out, and it's long out of print now,
Yeah.
but it sold pretty well actually. And there's a lot of songs on there that, well, are kind of like Aussie, so it went over okay, you know.
Sure. So is over this period over the 90s that release Damned If I Do, Damned If I Don't, I think comes out in 2000. Is there ever any time where you talk to the guys in Tigertailz? Any thought of trying to or because I
Uh,
think in 2006 or at some point you do go out playing shows as Tigertailz. Is that correct? Can you kind
well,
of tell me
yeah.
what led to that?
Um, I contacted Mick Jay and
Yep.
to see if he, wanted to go out and do. I've contacted him loads. He actually contacted. Well, we can get into that in a minute, but he contacted me for this compilation and blah blah blah. But I really wasn't talking to those guys. I was talking to Ace, but they they just were not in. Pepsi was doing his film work, whatever, and his TV work, and there was no interest in doing it. And I was the one that came up with this idea that we should do, a kind of anniversary thing, if you like, and stuff like that. And again, turned me down flat.
Okay.
Just didn't want to, people change, yourself. I moved on 20, 30 years, different person. And they obviously still thought I was the same person, I even contacted Mick to do a show at the Borderline in London with Kim O'Connor on bass for the first set. Mick on guitar, Ace on drums, me vocals for the Young and Crazy set. Then switch around, and they could do the Berserk one. Still uninterested,
Sure.
And even I did that 35th anniversary. Did you see that?
The
35th anniversary of Young and Crazy.
Yes.
With a guy called Robin Guy, who's no longer with us.
Yeah.
And I asked Mick if he'd come down and guest on that, and he said, no, too far, London's too far. Whereas I would have been like, yeah. So
Sure.
I can't speak for him, but animosity me? No, not now. I'm too old. Good God. He's 60. What is he, 61 or 60? I'm 63. I think we're a bit old for fun and games,
Right.
But it would have been good if I can't do it now because, since I had the stroke, I mean, that's messed me up quite badly. But back then, 2 or 3 years ago, I was completely up for it. And I was quite gutted that he turned it down, actually, because I thought he could have got up there for 1 or 2 songs, And the kids, well, I say the kids, they were older people there, but they would have loved it. It was packed. You know? We played the whole album plus some of my stuff. Cat Truth, My Private Hell. And it went down an absolute storm,
Yes. I was watching interviews about that show before this, when you were getting ready for that.
Oh, right. Yeah. It was, it was packed. It was packed.
Yeah.
It surprised me how many people were there.
Right.
And, he's never contacted me to do anything other than this compilation telling me what was going on about it and how they were using the songs and blah blah blah.
Was there a point in the 2000s where you and Ace kind of patched things up? Because okay, how did that come about? I mean, after you said you were pretty upset with how things ended with Tigertailz.
Yeah, well, but like I say, years go by and you mellow out, you forget. I'm bad at holding grudges. I've got to say, I've still got grudges from school. That's how bad I am. But with Ace, I kept on. I was his friend. I've been in bands with him since I'd started out in bands.
Yep.
So he played on demo of mine as well. Ragamuffin, Shaken Not Stirred, and Rodeo, which is on that Damned If I Do.
Yeah.
And and apparently, this is what he told me. I don't know how true this is. Apparently, when he did that, he was still in Tailz, and they said if he doubts me out and does that, they'll get rid of him. I was like, what? You're joking? He said, no, I'm not. I said, I don't believe it. But then, that's how it was. Them and me, it was really weird. I used to think, why do they dislike me so much when I was the one that got booted out for their benefit?
Sure.
Tigertailz was me, Mick, Jay, Pepsi, and Ace. It always was.
Yep.
Even when they got the new singer in it, all right, people say, oh, he's much better than you. Yeah, I don't doubt that. But he wasn't Tigertailz. He was just brought in because he was their friend. And the ironic thing about going back to that is he was my friend at the beginning, and they hated me hanging out with him. Right. They said, oh, he's two-faced, he's nothing but trouble. Right. And I used to hang out with him when I lived in Cardiff because he was in Rankelson.
Right.
It's weird. I don't want to sound bitter and someone who's hard done by, but some of the things I've heard over the years really, really does make me go, come on.
Yeah.
At least get it right.
Sure. In 2008, you put out an album called My Private Hell, which I mean, there was a lot of Chris Laney from Sweden is kind of a legend for being a
Yep.
producer that a lot of great he's done a lot of great albums
Oh yeah.
and people were talking about Steevi Jaimz again in 2008. So how did that project come about?
Yeah. That was another weird one. We were trying to put trying to get a guitar player for Tigertailz, and he obviously answered the thing, and I was like, I don't know how it came about, but I started talking to him, and it led to ideas, and it led to him wanting to do a record, you know, kind of like the old school stuff for me, but with a little modern twist on it, as it
Yep.
was back then.
Yep.
And he started sending me ideas, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this stuff was blowing me away, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, where was this guy when I was, 20 years ago? And anyway, I went out there, we started recording. I have to say, Anders, his second in command, if you like, was just as much as of a influence on that album as Chris was. They were
Anders
both,
Ringman.
yeah, they were both great. I was living with Anders, and we were walking to the studio every day, putting our stuff down early in the morning, going home, and we did it like it was all regimented, you know what I mean? And it was like by the time a certain time of day came, we were like, right, that's enough now. We're going to go home, and we'll come back tomorrow morning and we'll start again. He took me through all the warming up, warming down, and I was like, Christ, in Tigertailz, all I did was drink a beer, and that was it. It was so alien to me because young and crazy, we weren't told anything, you know.
Yeah.
Just go in there and do it, and we'll fix it later.
And My Private Hell was shit. That was just re-released on vinyl, wasn't it, a couple years ago?
Yeah, that was. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it was a couple of years.
What, 2023, I think?
Yeah, because a friend of mine called Dave Draper, who's a really good engineer, good studio work guy. He did a lot of the Wild Arts and remixes and everything. He remastered it for me, and when he remastered it, I was like, geez, this is like listening to a new record. He brought out guitars I'd never heard, little synth and keyboard bits. They were already on there, but
Sure.
I'd never really heard them on the CD. And it kind of gave it a new lease of life, you know. Yeah, I'm proud of that record. You know, it may be the last thing I ever do. It might not, but I'm really, really proud of it.
Did you put a band?
It stands up well.
Oh, absolutely. Did you put a band together and play shows for that, or what happened after the release of that?
Yeah. Not many shows. We did a show in Denmark.
Yeah.
We did a show in London, a show in Nottingham, and I think that was pretty much it. Not much around it because it came out and just that was it, you know. There was no big buzz about it. There was he never got the recognition I thought it deserved.
Right. So what? Give me okay, now we're getting into the 2010s. And first of all, I'll just ask this. You know, your reputation for drinking and carousing, which I went through that too. Like, was there a point where you felt like, hey, this is getting ridiculous. I'm out of control, and I'll just ask you, you know, was there a point where you felt you had to make a change?
Well, we can rewind back to when I was in Tigertailz, 23. Please. What were you doing when you were 23? Going out and getting drunk, having a good time.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing, you know. I came from a small village. I went to London and I just exploded and got in a bit of trouble, unfortunately. But, yeah, I mean, to be honest, the 80s, some of it's a bit of a blur because I was out of control. Yes, I really was. I couldn't stop myself, you know. Roll that on a few years or 10 years or whatever, I got diabetes. And I carried on behaving like I was. It was making me ill. And I remember the final straw came, ironically, when I was out with Chris Laney. I'll tell you a couple of stories. I was so wasted. We went to, I think it was a Metal Hammer party in London. Okay. And I forget where it was now. Anyway, we were outside, unbeknownst to me because I'm so drunk. He gave me his mobile phone to look after. And I lost him. I don't know how I lost him in the crowd, just so drunk, couldn't find my way. and I kept phoning his mobile phone, which was in my jacket, swearing at him. And you couldn't make things like that. And that was the night I woke up in Liverpool Street, outside Liverpool Street tube station, in my own puke.
Right.
And I just thought, this is it, man. I'm too old to be doing this.
When was this?
I stopped drinking about 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Shortly, and you said Chris Laney, who produced so shortly after My Private Hell.
Yeah, not that long afterwards, because he came over here. He was over here promoting one of his albums, and he stayed at my flat while he was here.
And the My Private Hell album, does kind of like show a person who's starting to rethink things and
absolutely
right.
Yeah, that I mean, it wasn't done with that in mind. But if you read between the lines, it's a story of me, kind of, all the way through, And sometimes I was just so drunk, I was screaming in my head, "Why are you doing this? What's going on?" And I'd go home, I'd have gotten a fight, my knuckles would be all bloody, my nose would be knocked over my face, I've been kicked in the head, and I just thought, you can't go on like this. You just can't go on, And like I say, in the end, I woke up that morning, I think it was, about 4 a.m. I don't know if the police woke me up, I can't remember, but I was laid in my own sick, and it was not good. Not good at all. And that's it. I just knocked on the head.
Did you ever were drugs ever your thing, or was it mainly just alcohol?
A bit of both. A bit of both. Yeah. I could tell some stories about that, but I'd rather not. But I mean, in Tigertailz, when I first joined, we were all speedheads, all 4 of us. Mad on it. But yeah, nothing really heavy in that. Not when I was with them anyway.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
When you did get sober, was it just white knuckle it, or did you try to go to treatment, or how did you end up? Because that's
sorry, I'm butting in again. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that's a long time of drinking, that to just quit on your own.
I started drinking when I was 13, and I came from an environment where it was you work all week, then you go to the pub, you get messed up, Saturday, Sunday, back to work Monday. And that's how I used to do it. And because I'm a little guy, as you know, I had to stick up for myself all the time, and I wouldn't back down from people, I just would think, no, shit, you calling me a puff? I'm not a puff. Let's have a tear up, and that's how we did, And that was how like I say, my dad used to say to me, I could start a fight in an empty room. That's how bad it was. And my dad also used to know. He said, I knew when it was time to leave because you had a little twinkle in your eye, and the little guy behind there would come out and he wanted to play, So it was like the devil inside me. And for years, people said, you're such a nice guy when you're not drunk. Why do you drink? And the reason why is I was addicted to it.
Sure.
I didn't drink because I liked the taste. I drank because I liked getting messed up on it. And, I wasn't very confident, and it brings out all that in you. And so, yeah, I wish to God I never had that first drink, but, I did. And that's how it is. But, and looking back, a lot of people were in the same. People like Dogs the Moor were out of their faces all the time. And I was saying, what about those guys?
Right.
It's funny, right? When I was in Tailz, it was Christmas. I remember it vividly. And we did a show. We were on first, Shy were on second, and UFO were top. But they had a different guitar player. So Phil Mogg, the guy from Shy who's dead now, and me. Yep. And those two guys were so obliterated they couldn't find the dressing room hardly. And I was sat there saying to the other guys in my band, I said, you think I'm banned? What about these guys? But it wasn't like that, I was with them and I was letting the side down. What they didn't seem to realise at the time is I was helping to shift loads of records as well.
Right.
So whether I alienate the band, but people were talking about us all the time.
When you look back, do you feel like the booze and the out of control? Do you feel like you would have had more musical output if you had gotten it under control at
Yeah,
age?
yeah, I think so. I mean, they say what you do defines you, don't they? But when I was drunk, I never had any inclination to write songs and do not like people say they do, you know.
Yeah.
When I was sober, that's when I wrote the songs.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah. And you know, all my friends used to say, "You're a nice guy when you're not drunk. When you're drunk, you're a complete arsehole."
Yep.
You
And
know?
I mean, I'm an recovering alcoholic. I used to think that when I was drinking was when I was creative or when I would write and stuff. And maybe even in the early days there was periods of that, but eventually you quit doing anything creative and all you're thinking about is getting drunk.
Yeah, exactly. And you think you're the funniest man on the planet, and everybody else around you's going, "Dick, you know, you can't see it." My dad said to me one day, he said, "I should video you drunk. You'll never drink again." You know, unfortunately, he never did. But
Right.
yeah, you know what it's like. You know,
Yep.
you go through stages in your life. You know, I've been married now for 30 years.
Oh wow.
So, you know, it's people people
You ever have,
change. Yeah.
did you
Sorry?
ever have kids?
Yeah, I've got one son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say in 2017, you appeared, I don't know, a couple songs on an album called Time Machine, like an AOR. It was put
Yeah,
out
yeah,
on
yeah,
AOR.
yeah.
So what was that about?
That is another friend of mine. He basically all this stuff he releases at AOR stuff.
Yep.
And we were talking, and he said, "What about if you do some covers?" And I said, "Well, you know, covers do all right sometimes, other times they don't." And so I said, "Let's go in and see what we've got," you know. So we spent a few days in the studio, and the songs were coming out really, really good. It was me, Phil Vokins, my old guitar player from Crash KO, and a guy called Dave Draper, you know, the mastermind of the studio and stuff.
Okay.
And together we put these songs together, and you know, so we did what did we do on there? God in Louisiana by Steve. Oh God, what's his name? Steve from the Pistols.
Oh, it's Steve Jones.
Yeah, Steve Jones. Sorry, we did a version of that, and I thought it was really, really good. You know, and there's some other stuff on there. Well, what we basically did was we sat down, Phil and I, and we picked songs mainly from the 70s
Sure.
that either meant something to us or we heard on the radio at certain times. And, you know, so we picked them as and when that. But uh, Paul, the guy who was at a record company, he picked God in Louisiana. And I said, "It brilliant idea."
Right.
Because I didn't know about it. I'd never heard that Steve Jones album.
Right.
But yeah, we did that release, and that's got the acoustic version of "Living Without You," which I first did at the private hell sessions, but we never released it because it wasn't finished.
Okay.
So we went back in and finished it, and he put a great Schenker like solo on there, and I just think that song is how it was always meant to be. It was never meant to be a heavy metal song, you know.
Sure. Sure.
But it's a good song. A good song's a good song.
Amen. December 23, 2022, you suffered a stroke. You just mentioned it. I couldn't even tell if I didn't know, I wouldn't know you had a stroke. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit like what was, what when it happened and the aftermath, how did that impact you?
It's left me brain damage. Some people say you've always been brain damaged, but it's left me with a bit of a sleepy eye. Hence the sun. I'm not wearing sunglasses. I want to be cool. I've just got a bit of a droopy eye, and it bothers me, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, I'm diabetic, and I was chain smoking. I have to say, chain smoking really badly. And one night went to bed as usual, and I had a hypo, which is a low blood count, in the night.
Yep.
And I woke up and I said to my wife, I can't move. I couldn't move. And she said, of course you can move. And pulled the blankets off me, and I still couldn't move. And I thought, what's wrong? And you automatically try and get up, you know. I got out of bed and fell straight over. Fell straight over. And as soon as they saw my face, they knew what happened. It all, I mean, I'm lucky. Most of it's come back. But it all dropped, all that side. My arm was like just a piece of flesh. I couldn't do anything with it. I couldn't walk properly. And I had to go to hospital, yeah. I remember the guy was in here going, I said, look, I'm all right to walk out the door. I'm worried about my dog, never mind me. They brought this big bed into my kitchen. I said, look, I'm fine to walk out the door. They said, you haven't seen yourself. Well, I couldn't walk, you know. And so it was a big wake-up call. You know, it was I'd had 2 mini ones. I don't know what they're called before that. Never even knew about it.
Sure.
Which is quite scary because my dad had the same things, you know.
Sure.
But yeah, it affected. People were saying when I was on the phone, I sounded like Ozzy Osbourne. It was really funny. Everybody's laughing, you know, so it made me laugh. But yeah, pretty scary thinking about it. I could have, you know, could have been in a lot worse state, man. I really could have, you know. So I mean, I've had some run-ins. I've had meningitis as well, which almost killed me.
Sure.
And I keep thinking God's keeping me alive. He's either keeping me alive to make me suffer, or it's keeping me alive because he wants me to do something good. So who knows, you know? But yeah, it was not good, not good at all.
I mean, you have one of the most amazing stories. The fact that you have gone through all this and are, number one, are still here is kind of fucking amazing, pardon my language. And you just said, well, maybe there's a reason that God decided to keep you around. So what's the future for you? I mean, what are you hoping to do?
Do you know what? I haven't thought about bands for a long time because when we did the anniversary, like I say, the 35th anniversary of Young and Crazy in London,
Yep.
I remember being on stage and thinking, you're like a fraud, you know, you're not like you were. And of course I'm not like I was. That was 4 years ago.
Yep.
And everybody coming up to me after saying, oh, it was great, it was this, we thought we were back in our 20s. And it kind of made me think, you know, we made a lot of people happy, which made me happy. But straight after that gig, I got COVID.
Right.
So, you know, bad luck. It's like when I was in Tigertailz, we always said bad luck followed us around. We had a lot of bad luck. And it's like me, you know, bad luck seems to follow something I've done. But, you know, it's tough being diabetic as well. It's whole lifestyle changes. But like you say, I'm still here. I've still got a story or two. There's loads of stuff I could have told you, but maybe for another time. Yeah.
Well, so Pepsi Tate died. Now I can't remember when, but he passed a while back. Like when that happens, is there any like reaching out to the guys that are still around from Tigertailz, or have you just not communicated with them?
They never invited me to anything. Lots of other people got invited. I mean, I was friends with his mum. I was friends with him. I lived in his house, you know, for months when I first went to Cardiff. But I will say this, when we were kids and we were, you know, in Tailz, we were going out on Saturdays and drinking to oblivion. Yeah. Really drinking. He got really, really ill with pancreatitis. And he almost died back then. I remember going to the hospital and he had so many things coming out of it. You know, he was touch and go. He had pancreatitis. And I think that's what came back and bit him.
Sure.
You know, so yeah, sad.
Yeah. Well, none of us are getting any younger. Do you talk to Ace ever? Ace and I have messaged a little bit. He's a Facebook friend. We talked about, you know, this release. So do you ever talk to him anymore?
I haven't talked to him for about 3 years since one of my friends died, and he was a bit rude about him. And I don't need it in my life, you know. I don't need the drama anymore. Sure. And I try and stay away from it. it's nothing personal. It's just the way I want it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Maybe a bit sad. Mate, I've known him since I was a teenager, 18 almost, and you know that Tigertailz thing will always bother me. That it
Yeah.
wasn't there, and it's
Yep.
one of those things, and it just will. I can't help it because I think, if it was me, it would be different. But everybody's different, I guess, and maybe one day I'll chat with him before I die.
Have you followed? Because Tigertailz has always kind of been around. Have you
Yeah,
been? You follow the career, and do you have any thoughts on what they've done in the last?
I've not really followed his. Well, it's basically just Mick, isn't it? I've not really followed his career, but they've got a new singer, I think now,
I think so.
and I, do you know what? I think if they were going to do it, they should have done it with Kim Hocker.
Okay.
If they were going to do it, I think when Pepsi went, they should have knocked it on their head.
Yeah.
But they'll say they carried on with his blessing. I don't think so. It was his band. When I first met him, he was the leader of Tigertailz.
Yep.
Loud and proud.
Yep.
So whether he'd want them to carry on or not, I don't know. I know that they've got this kind of heavy metal singer now, screamy and all this, and I just think it's so far removed,
Right.
even from the Berserk days. Remember in my days, and everybody's saying, "Oh, he sounds like Kim Hooker," and I'm thinking, well, he doesn't. He sounds like a heavy metal singer.
Right.
But good luck to him. If that's how they want to do things, I'm sure people are still, going and seeing them and doing all the rest of it. If that's how he wants it, that's how he wants it, And I think he owns the name. I went through all that stuff with Ace, the name business. He owns the name lock, stock, and barrel, and the images and everything else that goes with it, Yep. So he's entitled to do what he wants, really.
Yep.
What do you think of him? What do you think of him now?
There was an album they put out, and now I can't remember the name. This has probably been 7 or 8 years, and it was like they looked like cartoons on the cover.
That was with my old guitar player, Rob Wild.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rob Wild.
I think, it was my old guitar player.
And it was very 70s glam, and they put out a couple of videos. I remember like pipped it and popped it, and I was like, they got the hand claps and the seven, and I was, I didn't hate it. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
they kind of looked a little awkward trying to, really 70s glam, and they were a lot older at the time, but. I also am like, fuck, if they want to go out there and do music, I mean, hey, I salute you for still doing it,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So is there any, like right now, it's 2025, in 2 years is the 40th anniversary of Young and Crazy.
I was just talking about that tonight before I spoke to you. I would have done another anniversary had Robin, my drummer who did the last one, not died. He died of cancer,
Okay.
And he was like the life and soul of everything.
Sure.
And he was so positive. Even when I was saying to him, what's the point? He's saying, because those songs are great. He grew up on those songs.
Right.
And he said, those songs, Star Attraction, Living Without You, they're great. People rediscover their youth. He was right, And without him, it seems a little hollow. And to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't find a drummer to play quite as well as he could.
Sure.
Because he was phenomenal.
So are we basically saying that you're done?
Never say never.
Okay.
I'd have to get a little bit better. And as you know, getting older, you never get a lot better. But no, it's not that I don't want to do things. I can't do what I used to do, and it frustrates me.
Sure.
I mean, I can't run up a flight of stairs. Never mind running around on stage for an hour.
Right.
We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun back then.
Sure. And I mean, there are shit, Mick and Keith are still out there doing it.
I know.
Unbelievable. They still can run around on stage, or at
Yeah,
least Mick can.
didn't Don Dokken and George Lynch do some stuff and they hate each other?
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't, and I'll ask your opinion on this. What is your thoughts about vocalists? And you mentioned Don Dokken. Some of these guys, Vince Neil, are really struggling
Yeah.
vocally. Is your opinion, hey, it doesn't matter. They still, they should still be out, or do you think, hey, if you can't sing like you used to, you should not be? I just would like your opinion.
Who can sing like he used to, apart from Rob Halford, Glenn Hughes, who's a freak of nature, and Bruce Dickinson? People like that. It's, Don Dokken had a very distinctive, great voice.
Yep.
Unfortunately, he doesn't have that no more. But people say, I read people saying he still smokes a lot, does this and does that. But if he wants to do it, it's up to him, Who are we to say you're shit?
Nope.
Everybody's got a right to do what they want. But, Vince Neil, he's Motley Crue.
Yep.
No matter what anybody says about Karabi, it's the best album since Sliced Bread, Vince is Motley Crue, like him or not,
And nobody's forcing you to pay to go see him if you don't want.
Exactly. I went and saw Judas Priest a little while ago, and I've got to tell you, Rob Halford, he's from another planet. The guy is 70-odd years old. It's unbelievable.
Nobody should be able to do that high voice at that age.
No. When he was doing Painkiller, I was looking at my friend going, how the fuck does he do that? It was amazing. It really was. It was a good bill as well. It was Saxon, Uriah Heep, and Judas Priest. We had a great night, but I'm a massive Rob Halford fan.
Yep.
Always have been since the 70s. And just one of those singers I love.
Your voice was perfect because even as you age, I mean, you weren't trying to sing falsetto high,
exactly.
Like Star Attraction. That is something that you could do as an older person. That you could.
I can sing it now. I could sing it right now. Even though I got a sore throat, but it sounds all the better like that because it's gruff. The thing that made us stand apart from all the glam bands and all the nonsense that was over here and in the States was I didn't have a really high voice. Yeah. It made us stand out. It did. I used to tell them that. But no, they want a high pitch thing, and they got one in the end.
Right, and like I was saying, you can age into that low gravel voice. Most singers, excluding Rob Halford and Bruce Dickinson, most singers are going to regret singing that way when they were younger because when they're 50, 60, you can't do it.
You just can't. Your body changes. But some people say to me, well, you never could sing anyway, And I say, well, I'm still the same now. And they say, what, shit?
And you've been awesome. I'm about done. But is there any leftover tracks that you have from your releases that?
All sponged up. They were sponged up years ago. There's I used all the demos I had left over. All the tracks from Young and Crazy on the original one. My Private Hell, we only did Living Without You acoustic as an afterthought, if you like. Right. So that was the only thing we did, there was no other demos.
Right.
I'd like to say there is because, but no, I've used it all pretty much.
Sure. Steevi Jaimz, you are the definition of resilience. You have an amazing story, phenomenal career, and I'm so glad you came on to talk about it because everybody needs to know your story.
Oh, thanks very much, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll be keeping my eye on you. And if you decide to do anything, musically, again, you let me know and I'll promote it and you can come back on and talk about it. But I'm rooting for you to do something again.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate talking to you tonight.